afternoon, everyone. Glad to welcome you to today's edition of our webinar. And our topic today is AI is already in business. We all know that AI is already in business. So who should take the lead with the wheel? Why AI governance can no longer sit with IT alone? That is the topic we are going to explore today. And I'd like to start with the question that if AI is already shaping business decision across organization, so who is governing it? AI is one of the most innovative tools of our time. And as we know that innovation really starts from the boardroom. It starts from the workroom, or what some we call from the war room. Then after the innovation is batted, who's supposed to give it proper direction? And in many organizations today, we have seen that there is adoption of AI tools. Different AI tools are being used, workflows are being influenced, our output, and the output from it is being trusted. However, ownership and accountability are still not clear. And if you want to ask further question, we'll probably say that our leaders playing catch up with AI. Have we left governance to IT while the rest of business move ahead? And when something goes wrong, as is expected, it will, and as some have experienced it, so who will take the responsibility? To help us unpack this topic today, very interesting topic today, are three eminent speakers who are eminently qualified to do justice to the topic because they have been on the side of the board, on the side of the front of innovation as well. And to start with, we are going to start with the governance gap itself. What happens when AI is treated too narrowly as a technology? That's what we want to look at. And our first speaker today is Alexander Okonkwo. Alexander is Assistant Manager, Privacy, AI Governance, Ethics, and Compliance at Momo PSB. Momo is a payment service bank and a subsidiary of MTN Nigeria Limited. So Alexander will be speaking on when IT takes the wheel alone, why AI governance breakdown without privacy, ethics, and compliance. I'm glad to have you with us today, Alexander. So we believe you are going to do justice to the program. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Iyanda. I'm so happy to be here and to, share my knowledge and experience when it comes to handling AI governance in organizations. So if you just give me a few seconds to share my screen. Okay, I hope my presentation is visible.
Yes, please.
All right. Okay, thank you. So I'll be speaking on when IT alone takes the wheel, right? So businesses today make use of AI in one way or the other, right? Either they are sanctioned or unsanctioned. But what we've realized is that most organizations tend to just shift that responsibility to the technology team without inviting the other parties to the table, right? But just before we proceed, a few things we need to bear in mind. Firstly, AI is not new, right? We've always had AI models as seen in product recommendations used by Amazon, email spam filters used by Gmail and Yahoo, your computer games, your voice assistants like Siri. And these models have run for decades, right? Integrated into everyday applications that we use. And it's quite interesting. But what exactly, why do we now have so much noise about AI as if this technology has not always been there. Is because mostly because of generative AI, the advent of generative AI, the fact that you have broad instant access and it could generate personalized content, and it is something you could interact with. So it rubs off on psychology and on the mind of the person that, hey, I have something, I have an application that I just don't put in my name, username, sign up and perform maybe some transactions, but this application answers back, right, in a way that makes it feel as if it is a human being that is talking to me. And that is why we have the noise, right? And if you compare the adoption of generative AI to other tech mega trends, you will see that the race to achieve 1 billion users took less years when it comes to generative AI like ChatGPT, just about 3 years, while the others it took them longer years to achieve that number of users. And it keeps growing. I mean, you wake up, if you are the type that uses Instagram like me, right? You wake up, you go on Reels, you find it difficult catching up. There's just a whole lot of things changing every day, right? And like I said before, this is something that you already make use of in your organization one way or another, whether you have an AI tool or model that you already sanctioned and approved for your employees to use, or you don't, you still find out that your employees have some that help them out to perform their daily tasks on the side, right? And its governance, as seen from various surveys, has been left mostly with the technology team. And these are according to the American Arbitration Society. The first one, they did a survey of about 500 companies across US and Canada. And I mean, the response is quite obvious. 80% of organizations say that, IT or technology teams contribute to AI governance, but 30%, 35% of that 80% responded that they involve legal and compliance team, which is, quite small. And the other surveys speak for themselves. You have the one conducted by IAPP, that is the International Association of Privacy Professionals, in collaboration with Cradle. They released a report in 2025 where they studied the current work done by organizations to institute proper governance in their AI processes. And they discovered that 77% are currently working on AI governance, but that is after they had already adopted some AI tool in their processes. Moving on, why do organizations stumble at the onset? And what do I mean by this? Why do organizations cede the responsibility of AI governance to the technology team? And there are a couple of reasons. The first one is the culture shock and ineffective change management. So the culture shock here we are talking about is, okay, we have AI, everybody is making noise about it. They've said AI is going to take over our jobs. Why don't we give it to the technology team? Since this is all about technology, let them manage it. And in doing that, they disregard the other governance enabling teams that will actually provide the right support in order to make responsible use of AI a thing in the organization. Another reason is knowledge gap, right? Because people think that AI is new or because AI is complex, right? They fail to dig deep to even understand what AI is all about and its capabilities. Yes, today, some organizations have made uh, good effort in ensuring that they deploy enterprise-wide knowledge about AI and its capabilities, but the gap is still very much. And still on the knowledge gap, some organizations actually struggle to understand what governance is all about, right? Some organizations think that governance is about control, but it is not. Governance is about providing direction. While some think that governance should be reactive, right? We have to wait for us to implement this before we then know what to do in order to support it regulatory wise and all that. But it shouldn't be. Governance should be anticipatory. AI is here before we adopt it, before we even start to make use of it. What are the guardrails we need to put in place? Governance is not just about paperwork, right? It is a behavior, it is a culture shift that should happen in order for organizations to get AI governance right. And some organizations also think that governance is just for the board alone, right? Yeah, it might start from the board. The board should put that tone at the top for the entire organization, but it is a shared responsibility for the business team, for technology team, for compliance, for strategy, for finance. Also, it is not static, it is flexible, right? Because years ago, nobody talked about AI, but today we are all talking about AI. That's the reason all of us are on this platform to discuss how to make it better, right? So your organization should also be flexible in its governance approach. Then it shouldn't be seen as the legal finish line, as the end point, but rather what would help you to achieve your aims or your goals as an organization. Another reason why organizations tend to, shift this particular function to the technology team, like I said earlier, we are about to adopt an AI tool, right? Because it is called a technology tool. You say, oh, well, technology team can manage it, right? Let's all sit back and just get input from them. And in doing that, you miss out on the governance functions. Another reason is there is this mentality or mindset that since we have the right tool, right, everything will sort itself out. But you're missing out on the control aspect. And I will give us an example later in my presentation on why just having the right tool might not always be the best mindset for your organization. And the last but not the least, when we get there, when we get to that bridge, we'll cross it. Some organizations have that practice. Let us first implement. Then when we get to, if any trouble comes up, we'll find a way to, manage it. And when this happens, right, you see that in that banquet table where AI is being discussed, you have a great number of people from the technology team, the product team, the business development, executive office, strategy, and maybe finance occupying that table. But you are leaving out other very important functions, such as the privacy team, the legal team, ethics, risk management and compliance, and audit. And maybe I should refresh our memory on the importance of these teams before we move into what could go wrong, right? The privacy person will advise you on the appropriateness of the data that feeds into your AI tool. And as you all know, or maybe this might also serve as a reminder, AI runs on data, and some of these data elements are personal data. So you need the privacy team to, give you that proper guidance on how best to manage, data as an input into your AI tools. Then for legal team, right, you need the legal team to provide you with that support on interpreting what laws actually relate to the tools or the implementation plan that you have for your organization. And of course, we can't overstress the importance of proper risk management and compliance as business enablers. And of course, the audit team will always give you that overall assurance, right? That in the event maybe something is about to go wrong, right? Because they are the third line of defense, they'll be able to catch whatever it is before it spirals out of the organization. Now, one would question, why did I highlight ethics? Not because I perform in the ethics, not just because I perform in the ethics function, but if you check most of the risks or harms that come out of AI implementation is around human dignity, is around sustainability, right? So you need to tighten up your ethics plan or program and practices if you really wish to get AI implementation right. And let's not forget the important roles of information security, right, in protecting the overall architecture, human resources in hiring the important persons in technology and other teams to support your AI implementation, and of course, customer support for that feedback. Because I believe that the one of the reasons why an organization will go the way to import an AI tool or make use of an AI tool is to improve the bottom line. And how do you improve the bottom line? If you serve your customers rightly. So if you really wish to get the proper feedback, right, and resolution path for your customers, making use of your products, or what you offer to your customers, because you make use of AI tools, you need the customer support team to achieve that, and of course every other team. So in essence, no team should be left out in AI conversations, right? When you are forming the committees to discuss the strategy, the implementation, the governance, and you are inviting technology, product, business, also ensure that you invite compliance, legal, ethics, and the rest. Now, when these teams are left out, these are the problems you are causing for the organization. These are the possible risks, right? So you've left out the privacy person. What happens is that you start to experience unlawful and unnecessary processing of personal data, unauthorized access to that data, and loads of data subject requests that you don't have a way to manage. That means you're bringing the privacy person at the end, right? And that will slow down your processes. Then another bucket of risks will be the legal and regulatory, right? You brought in the legal person at the end and not at the beginning, so you are misinterpreting laws, you're operating outside the boundaries of the law, and soon when there are defects in your AI tool or in your product improvement, because you made use of AI tools, right? You will have legal action that follow, and you spend a whole lot of money in sorting out these issues. And let's not forget the social harms to individuals, environment, society, and the tainted public image that might even affect the way your investors and other stakeholders look at you. The financial loss, like I mentioned before, revenue loss, because you're going to lose customers, right? If you do not get it right at the onset. Then the operational risk, model drift, inadequate controls. Then the third party risks. This is something that organizations need to really look into, because that you bought an AI tool from a third party or a vendor does not cede your accountability and your responsibility to that vendor. You need to be accountable for what that AI does in your organization and what it suggests to your customers. Then, of course, the people and culture issues. So when you have not educated the entire organizations, your employees, right, even down to the contract people working for you, on your AI strategy and what they need to know in order to use AI responsibly, you start to see poor AI practices. And one of those poor AI practices is that people start to make use of unsanctioned, and not just unsanctioned tools, right? They now use it in ways that are mischievous, that you think might improve on the work, but on the long run it will harm your organization. So these are examples of some companies that some of them have got their fingers burnt, while some have exposed themselves reputation wise. Pizza Hut, Yum Brands. So I'll tell you the full story. They deployed Dragon Tail, an AI delivery system, and the intention was, to automate their delivery, improve the delivery time. But what now happened was, because they left this platform open for their delivery guys to have access to it, their delivery guys started picking the juicy delivery options. They're leaving out the other ones that won't really pay them. So This led to $100 million lawsuit from Chuck Pizza, which is one of their franchisees, right? And it's not a case of that the two is not working or that there is a defect in the tool, but the proper human review was not just done. The second case is Burger King. So Burger King deployed Patty. Patty is integrated into the headsets and the communication devices that their customer support persons make use of. So it is meant to listen in on these conversations by their customer support team and then grade each person on their level of friendliness. So it will listen out for words such as thank you, how may I help you, and even the tone on which the thank you was said. I mean, there's a way I would say thank you, and you know that I really appreciate your order or your the fact that you are using my service. While there is a way I would say thank you to sound dismissive, so it went down to that level. So HR and humanitarian experts raise this as a concern, not just because of the behavioral monitoring, but come on, this is against human dignity. Imagine if there is an Anne in the team, right? And I'm the one reviewing the ratings for all the customer support persons. I mean, someone like me might be like, I never really liked that lady. I mean, look at her rating. She says thank you in a dismissive way, and that will eventually affect that employee's performance on the long run. Then Air Canada, they deployed a chatbot, right, to manage bookings and all that. So what the chatbot did was it suggested or it invented a non-existing discount policy to a traveler. And when the case escalated to court, Air Canada came with a defense that, I mean, the AI is a separate entity from Air Canada. But the court said, sorry, because you deployed it doesn't mean you should not be accountable for this tool that you deployed. And they lost that case. So one would ask, these are all foreign cases. What about Nigeria? Yeah, true. In Nigeria, we've not really had an example of AI specific case, right? But hey, we have cases where our regulator, the NDPC, has sanctioned some organizations. Why? Because they did not follow or they did not comply with data privacy, the right data privacy practices in line with the NDPA. And now there are talks, right, from the NDPC to revise the NDPA and, include robotics, AI, and all that. When that happens, and if your organization is already far behind on privacy, you've not instituted the right practices, it will be difficult for you to, catch up. So that is why, again, why I said governance should be preemptive. If organizations already know that regulators are going towards this direction, I think it is best to start now to put things in place in order to make use of AI responsibly and protect your organization even before the regulations are published. Now, on a final note, what should change in order for you to achieve that desired goal of proper governance, proper AI governance? Firstly, move the governance practices from the end to the beginning. Involve those governance enabling teams from the onset. Call in the privacy person, call in the risk manager, the compliance person when you are about to hatch that idea, that AI related idea. Call them in at the beginning and not something that you do just along the line or towards the end. Then, secondly, the board in the organization or the highest decision making authority in organization should approve and empower an AI governance person. I mean, it's also a way for the board to say to the entire organization, we support proper AI use in the organization and we are empowering this person as a champion, right, to run the cause of proper governance. He is equipped to set up teams, to escalate issues, to educate, and the likes. Give the person a list of clear responsibilities to report back to you on how AI governance should be implemented. Then there should be tiered oversight to risk management. Yeah, because we are discussing AI and the possible risk doesn't mean that all AI tools have the same level of or require the same level of risk management. No. So that is why this is where you now need a risk manager, right, to look into it and advise you on the proper risk management principles to take for each AI implementation effort you are making in the organization. And let the business take a shared ownership. Yes, the board has set the tone at the top, right? But governance is not like I mentioned earlier, it's not about control. It's not for the board alone. It is a shared responsibility. The product team, the technology team, the finance team all have, a role to play when it comes to governance. They all have things they need to take ownership of. I mean, the technology team won't be the one to approve the budget. They won't be the one to engage the regulators when the chips are down, right? But there are things they need to put in place and take ownership of, to have that collaboration and joint effort in achieving the goals of the organization. Build audit trail and documentation. In fact, this is something I learned earlier. Beyond AI, I think it is a governance practice that organizations should institute. And you document everything, whether that decision applies now or it is a simple consideration for the future. And the reason I'm saying it is this: because of how complex and because of the speed at which AI is being developed, right? Some of the things you consider today in meetings may not apply today, but may apply in the future. So it is good you document them, and so that you can always go back and make reference and take the right action. Invest in literacy and education. Deploy training sessions. And this will be better championed if you have someone called the AI governance or the chief AI person, which, by the way, could be anybody, right? But of course, the person needs to work with those privacy, compliance, and legal team to achieve the aims. But ensure that one of the responsibilities of that AI governance person or team is to institute or to implement proper AI literacy or education plan or program in the organization. And finally, shift the board's posture from report receivers. Most some organizations, when they prepare wonderful slides, wonderful reports, they list a whole lot of accomplishments, achievements, and places that need improvement and present to the board. And applaud, they applaud them and all that. But you then need to point your board members' attention to the risk areas, right? And tell a good story. Why is this thing risky to the organization? What is it going to cost us, right? And what are the possible things we can do from today going forward in order to make it better? And when you give the board that chance, they have enough information to make a more informed decision, right? And I mean, you achieve your happiness when you might have taken all the steps. So please remember, on a final note, AI is not new, like we've seen, right? It is already inside your organization, one way or another. And remember, governance should be a team sport, right? Don't leave it for the IT to work alone, like Liverpool Anthem. And then
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you start to wonder what went wrong here when you invite the other teams at the end. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Thank you so much. So, thank you, Alexander. I think you've hit it really hard, and we quickly transition so that we can save time to speaker two, who is Ugochi. Ugochi will be addressing us. Ugochi, a little bit about Ugochi. Ugochi used to be the lead Google Gemini and AI partnership and activation for Sub-Saharan Africa. Of recent, she decided to step aside, and she wanted to acquire more knowledge and go back to school. She will be speaking on AI is already running, who is governing it, what enterprise deployment is revealing about the governance gap. Ugochi, we yield the floor to you as you do justice to the topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yonda, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad to be here Just to save time, I will quickly start to share my screen. Give me a few minutes. Let me share. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. I think Alex has already, done justice to the topic around why we should do, AI governance properly. But let me take a few steps back. We understand that there should be governance, right? But what I'm going to talk to you about today is I'll take you through what enterprise deployment reveals about the gap between adoption and oversight. There is a gap. We are just beginning the journey, just like everyone else, but there is a gap. And how do we make sure that, these gaps that we see are covered? So what does AI deployment look like in practice today? It is embedded in many of the functions that we already spoke about. It's usually embedded in customer service, finance, HR, security and operations. It's adopted team by team. And what I mean by this is many organizations decide that what's the easiest place for us to introduce AI? It would be things like customer service, chatbot responses, things like that. And then you decide that this team should adopt AI first, and then we'll see how that goes. So that's how it's generally spreading currently. It's not a central strategy that we see. How is it built, right? It's usually built from tools, APIs. Some vendors already have AI solutions that they're selling. That's how we see that these things are built today. And it's already starting to influence some of the real outcomes that we see. So in practice, AI adoption is messy. Just hearing what I've said today, it's messy. It's distributed across just various teams, and it's very fast, right? It rarely comes through a defined strategy or one master strategy that we sit down together and kind of put together as an organization. It's usually spreading through these business units, through things like co-pilots, which you've heard about before, some of the chatbots and everything. In Nigeria, especially, we have AI deployments in fintech, in telecoms, just like Alex and his team. You have banking, you have healthcare, you have service operation. We're already using AI for things like risk assessments, customer interactions, fraud, security monitoring, and just kind of workflow supports with AI agents that we see today, right? So the first point is really simple. Many organizations still describe AI almost like a pilot, right? So are we piloting it for customer service? Are we piloting it for fraud? Maybe we should try it for this. But once it starts to affect your customers, your staff, and your operations, you should already be thinking about it like infrastructure, right? An architect for it, because it's now your organization's infrastructure. Now let's move on to what is deployment and what is governance. So an easy way to think about it is, what would you ask if you were deploying, right? Your deployment will always ask, can we launch it? And that's where we've launched AI. Everybody's talking about the AI solutions that they've launched. Your governance will always ask, can we trust it? Can we explain it? Can we monitor it? And can we control it? And that's where we need to be shifting to, because where we've traditionally seen ourselves in the last couple of months of everyone rushing to deploy AI is, let's launch something, let's launch something. We now need to shift away from that and start to think about trust, monitoring, and control, right? This is the distinction that matters the most today, right? Deployment is about the speed, the integration of the solution, and how useful it is today once you've deployed it. But governance is really about how accountable the solution is, how reliable it is for your customers that are using it, how transparent it is, and can you manage the risks that are associated with it. That's the distinction that really needs to matter as we move along our AI, journey and AI fluency, right, as we go along as organizations. So if as an organization you can successfully launch an AI system, but you're unable to explain it, you're unable to understand what the data does today, you can't really say who is responsible for it if it fails, then you have a governance problem. And we need to start thinking about how do we cover these governance problems that we see. You know, especially for us, because some of the industries that we really need AI to leapfrog our development, where we've traditionally stalled, right, are really important to users today. So those areas like lending, areas like healthcare, customer outcomes, and all of that are the areas that we really need to start thinking. How do we ensure that things are safe? How do we ensure that we're managing the risks as we're adopting these AI solutions? Because we've been behind in some of those areas. And taking AI will leapfrog us, into providing solutions that we might have thought would have taken us 10 years, 20 years, and all of that, right? But in now leapfrogging and providing those solutions, we also have to understand that there are risks. And even though we say that, we don't have any AI laws per se, so there's nothing that we're breaking. I think Alex kind of insinuated it. We do have some laws already. So if you think about the NDPA, that's the Nigerian Data Protection Act, right? It already places some limits on, the obligations that you should have as an organization, how you treat automated decision making and personal data processing. And all of these things should already be incorporated into your AI strategy and your AI risk management, right? So when you talk about your shipping AI out, it's not the same thing as managing it responsibly. And we should always remember that. Now, what are the practical signs that you have governance lagging in your organization? So this is practical. The things that you can look out for. We've insinuated that with the former speaker, Alex. Some of these things we've already talked about. You don't have a clear owner, right? There are no logs or audit trails. You have hallucinations reaching users, and hallucinations, no matter how we think about them, will happen sometimes. We just need to make sure that we're tracking them and that we're able to make sure they're not as harmful to the users. You're thinking about local context. Your AI solutions, you have local context already tested with those solutions. And then there's always a cost, right? You have tokens that you're paying for with your AI solutions. Do you have visibility around these costs that you have, right? So these gaps will always show up in the operationalization of your AI. The gaps will start to show up. You see them when no one can say what the model you are using is, when your prompts and outputs, you don't log them, and then when there are harmful responses that are missed. So, for instance, when you have hallucinations, how do you check that hallucinations are happening? For most people, it's a customer reporting that, this hallucination happened. What if the customer doesn't report? What if there are customers that just say, this is just useless, I'm not going to use this organization anymore because they're giving me wrong information, and they just move? So you need to be making sure that you're tracking that. You need to understand if there's local context, right? Is it getting the right Nigerian names? Does it have the context of the industry that you are in? Does it understand Nigerian accents and therefore is not making errors when it's giving responses because it understands the accents? And then as a continent and as a country, we understand our realities. So many of these AI systems are built on formal data repositories. We understand that for us in sub-Saharan Africa, we have many informal data repositories that need to be incorporated. So are we sure that the AI solutions that we have are incorporating all of these realities that we have as a continent and as a country, right? So if you're thinking about a useful line that you can adopt here, I think a useful line here would be, if your model is not tested for local context, it's not ready for your local impact. So think about that. If it's not tested for local content, it's not ready for your local impact that you want to make in your community, in your country, on the continent. So what are the things that we see that these deployments, the enterprise deployment, the gaps that we see that enterprise deployment is revealing? So there are 4 gaps that we want to talk about. The first one is a readiness gap. The organizations are today deploying tools before we are understanding the risks. We've talked a lot about that. We don't understand the risk of the tools if we see some hallucinations, if it's not context ready. What are the risks and how are we going to manage those risks if they show up? So that's the first gap that we see. There's no readiness. The second gap is an ownership gap. I won't dwell too much on that because we've talked a lot about ownership. It just sits awkwardly across IT, legal, compliance. Nobody knows who really owns it. The third gap is oversight. So who is monitoring what is happening on a daily basis, right? So the monitoring, some organizations have a little bit of monitoring, but what we see is that either monitoring is totally absent or it's limited. The fourth gap we see is capability, right? Our traditional AI tools do not tell you whether a model is drifting, is hallucinating, or is making any unfair decisions. So should we rethink those traditional tools that we use? So the capability of those tools, are they sufficient for the situation we find ourselves today in with AI, right? For fast scaling markets like us, right, there's pressure to adopt often, right? Yes, and this sort of outruns the need that we need to supervise, but we need to go back and rethink that, because further down the line, right, you can start to see real problems. So we need to rethink, and balance the speed with which we adopt with how we oversee the solution in general. So let's talk about why observing this word gets to me. Observability matters, but it's very important in AI, right? You can't govern what you cannot see. So we need to make sure that there are things that we're observing within our AI systems that we deploy. The first one is accuracy, right? How are we observing how accurate the system is? I think maybe explain, the second one is drift, and I think maybe explain a bit more, because I realized that Alex, talked a bit about drift, right? This is basically, drift is basically the degradation of the model's performance, because their inputs and the environment, the relationships of the data that you have, the variable data that you have changed since the training of that model, right? And the model itself has not changed. So for instance, if a model was built for Europe, you bring it here, there are things that are shifting in terms of the environment, and things like that. And the model itself has not changed. So therefore, the output might not be right. So you need to observe that. Other things like prompt behavior, cost, security, user impact, these are all really valid things that we should be observing, right? So here, observing becomes really critical, right? Our traditional monitoring can tell you whether the server is up, if server is down, but for AI, we have to go a bit further than that. And these are the things that I've highlighted here that we need to be looking at, right? Let's look at now, what should we as organizations here in Nigeria and sub-Saharan Africa, what should we be doing now? The first thing we should be doing is treating AI as governed infrastructure. We've talked about just moving it from a pilot and treat it as, infrastructure that is governed, right? It's not, the opportunity here for us with AI is not to copy the mistakes of more mature markets. It's to govern our own AI, and build that governance in a bit earlier. right? We talk a lot about, AI law. We don't have AI law yet, but we have to think about the fact that even with the more mature markets, for instance, Europe, they have AI. They have the EU AI Act, but the EU AI Act is very risk focused, right? And for us as a developmental continent, we have to think about how we infuse our developmental context into building the AI and not just being risk focused on risk. What we're doing is shortening the line, the rope that we have for ourselves to make sure that it really understands our context and it really takes into account the developmental nature of the continent and the countries in which we live in. So for us, what we should be doing while we have our AI strategies being built out, like the Nigerian government is doing now, and many other governments in Africa, we can use the existing legal obligations that we have now with things like NDPA to start to put together what governance and risk should look like in our organizations before any laws come out, right? Then we should be testing for local context. We've talked a lot about that. We should assign clear ownership, and then we should build our monitoring and human reviews early. So there are 5 practical steps that we should think about, and I've highlighted them here. The key message from these 5 steps is that our deployment should not be a cleanup exercise. Our governance deployment shouldn't be a cleanup. It shouldn't come at the end. It should come built in when you are deploying the AI systems. So our real competitive edge, if we think about it, is we will win not just deploying AI faster. We win if we govern it better. Make sure that we're looking at the risks, make sure that we understand the costs, and we're building those costs into our budgeting and our revenue generation and revenue understanding. We are making sure that there is no bias, there's no harm coming to our customers. We're not losing the customers. We're in fact making them more valuable customers. And making sure that we have put into place all of the governance that is needed, to ensure that we are growing the organization and not reducing, revenue and our customers, right? So our future will not just depend on just how smart the models we are deploying are, and to show that we were the first to deploy these smart models. It will depend on how we can supervise the models, how we can intervene when it is needed, either for the customer or for the risk that the organization faces. And it's about building readiness along with our competitive edge. And I think, that is, in summary, what as organizations we should be aiming for. And that is, I think, we've come to the end of this session, and I hope you found it useful. I've tried to keep it, short, but we could talk a lot more about some of the issues that we see when we deploy AI. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Ugochi. And I think you and Alex, you've done justice to the assigned topic. I have a lot of questions in my mind, and I want to believe that others also have their questions. So whatever question you have, please, let's put it in the chat. You've spoken about the hallucination, and I love that so much. I love what Alex said when he talked about governance is not about being in control. It's about, it's about direction. And he talks about something around the fact that whether you sanction it or not, and that's why all of us should be involved in this, whether you sanction it or not in your organization, employee will use it. And the reason why employee will use it is very clear. And I like what you also said, Ugochi, when you mentioned that it's not about the force to deploy. The advantage we are going to have is going to be in the areas of governance. And that's why governance is very, very critical. And we need to stop putting the cart before the horse so that we are able to do things the way we should. We are going to move to Dr. Obrima now. Dr. Obrima is a veteran boardroom guru. He's a banker. Or he was a banker, I don't know, because he's retired, but a banker, I think a banker will always be a banker. Dr. Brima is currently the lead consultant at ELB Integrated Resources, And if we're looking at when AI belongs to everyone, then who is accountable? How do we define ownership, across the organization? So, Dr. Obrima, you are welcome.
Thank you, sir. Maybe. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I think that Alexander and Ugochi have done my work for me. So I'm just going to go through I'm just going to take 4 slides from my presentation because I avoid repeating what everybody else has said. So basically the accountability challenge, that's really why, that's what I'm supposed to talk about. So AI is enterprise-wide, but accountability must be clear. So, when you look at it, AI impacts on risk, on compliance, on reputation, on strategy, and on sustainability. From a governance perspective, who has responsibility for all of that? Is the board. So AI is no longer an IT issue, but it's a boardroom governance responsibility. So basically, it's summarizing what everybody has said. But I will also, Alex had actually dealt with this. The challenge with why you have this problem is that people think about technology, limited executive understanding, which is really important that organizations, especially those in executive management, get board members to attend trainings on AI. I was fortunate to attend the board governance program in Malaysia, and there was a whole session on AI. So it's important that, and maybe in an ex-bank, I see that happening in industries where there's limited executive understanding, credits don't get approved because the guys at the top don't really understand the dynamics. So it's important that there's executive understanding. Focus is usually on people, infrastructure, technical performance, machine learning tools, data platforms, automation tools, and Alexander and Ugochi have already alluded to that. So why IT ownership fails? Alex has spoken a lot about this, so I won't go into it. I would want to talk about it should be an enterprise-wide governance strategy to be able to develop AI. You have better outcomes, you have improved fairness, you have stronger transparency, there's enhanced trust, and there's low operational risk when that is done. So what should the model look like? The board has strategic and oversight accountability. Executive management should have enterprise ownership and resource allocation. The IT guys should have implementation and operations. Risk management should have, there should be risk assessment and monitoring, security controls and resilience. Compliance should contribute regulatory alignment, while legal should be looking at legal obligations and liability management. The internal audit should look at independent assurances. Of course, HR will be looking at ethical issues, and the business units, who are the ones that really who use this the most, have operational accountability. So it should be an enterprise-wide governance. Everybody has a role to play, but then who has accountability? It is the board. So that is, and I think we should not forget that. And then, I would just say that AI should be embedded across organizations, should not be a tech role. AI should be shared ownership. It should, but does not eliminate accountability. It requires clear governance structures. Multidisciplinary AI governance frameworks position organizations to reap the benefits of AI while managing risk responsibly. And I think that Ogochitu has, in our summary, in our conclusion, said this: the long-term success of AI will be those with clear accountability structures, not those with the most advanced models. So you can have a fantastic model, but then without proper structure, you run into problems. I mean, you've had situations where AI, the algorithms are biased, either to gender or to color or to race or to tribe. So you have those kind of things. But with a multidisciplinary AI structure, a framework, you're able to address all these issues. And I think the board provides guidance. I mean, the role of the board is, I think it's three things. One is supervisory, one is advisory, and the other is consulting. So, I mean, the board should be carried along. The board should have their input in developing this, the AI framework, because your AI framework must actually align with your strategic vision as an organization, your values, even your culture. All of those need to be taken into consideration when you're developing the AI framework. So in terms of accountability, it sits with the board. It's not everyone. Everyone has roles, everyone has responsibilities, but accountability is with the board. So I mean, that would be my summary. I don't want to repeat every other thing that Ugochi and Alexander had discussed, but accountability rests with the board, but we all have responsibilities. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bremer. Successfully put, is expected, as a board person. So I want to thank the three of you. You've done justice to the topic. If you look at the three polls that we shared, and I think they are quite insightful. There is one that talks about who is leading AI in your organization. And majority of the respondents talks about the IT. So which align with what Alexander expressed. Apologies, I think I just got knocked off. So the one that surprised me was the last question, which talks about what's the biggest barrier to AI adoption. And I was surprised to hear that majority of the respondents say we are not even addressing it. So that creates a big problem, right there, because you have the barriers, whether we like it or not, but we are not even conscious of it. We are not even addressing it. Probably because we are not looking, it's not a priority yet, maybe if I can put it that way. Let me ask a question. Whether we like, and I like what Dr. Bremer said in terms of the board must have responsibility. So whether we like it or not, there will be liabilities that comes with it. You cannot acquire the asset without the liabilities. And I think Alexander, alluded to that when he gave example of Pizza Hut and the likes of Air Canada, and what have you. What can we do to minimize this risk in our organization? How do we minimize that risk? The risk of exposure, the risk, the liability that comes from exposures. I don't know. Who want to take the question?
I mean, I can. You mean with three of us?
Yes, any of you can take it.
Okay. I think just thinking about everything that we've said, to minimize the risk, we now have to start thinking about AI as actual infrastructure, the same way we think about IT infrastructure. So for instance, if you wanted to acquire IT infrastructure, you would have, this whole process of understanding what the risk is if we deploy this solution, what the costs are every year that we need to. So those are the kind of things that instead of saying, I think Gemini is a great chatbot, let's just add it to now start to think about it as IT infrastructure, because that allows you to then understand what costs, risks, future, implications of the solution will be. It also helps you understand what the solution is as itself. Our traditional IT, we've spoken about traditional IT, deploying traditional IT. Is the server up? Oh, the server is down. Who is monitoring that the server is up? The server is down. No. With AI, there are other things that we now need to incorporate, and Alex has spoken a bit about that. You need to incorporate things like legal consequences, which we've talked about, which is liability. You need to incorporate things like ethics and bias, which we've talked about. Is it gender biased? Does he understand our context? Will he make sure that there's fairness and our type of context, the bias is incorporated into, and who is monitoring that? So this is a new era of technology that we need to rethink. So it's on understanding it as infrastructure and trying to deploy it as IT infrastructure, but also making sure that we incorporate this new technology area that we have found ourselves in, which is AI, which brings in things that we did not normally monitor with traditional IT infrastructure, things like ethics, bias, compliance, rights with data rights, and things like that, risk management that is far above what we traditionally see with IT.
Well, thank you, Gucci. I think you did justice to that. Again, you see, technology, especially when you discover that the passive ease of use or the ease of use become when it become easy or easier to use, so the rate of abuse, get high. If you look at AI now, not too many organizations are investing in training. This is how you're supposed to use this kind of prompt you're supposed to do. So it's like it's free for all. All of us are just trying to, do whatever we feel we should do, and sometimes garbage in, garbage out, and that also increase our level of the level of liability, so to say. And that's brings me to this question to say that how do we ensure proper use of AI agents in our organization? Because people are skilled differently. We can use the same, we can research on the same thing and we are going to have different results. Okay, so how do you ensure that we are skilled in using this tool in our organization? And what are the tips that we must look out for? Anybody can answer that question.
I can still go answer the question, and I can just do a short answer, and then maybe somebody else can. I think it's very important both with the organization, and we talk a lot about this with education as well. The thing is, what we are concentrating on today is AI knowledge. We need to move from AI knowledge to AI fluency, because AI knowledge is understanding what AI, like you said, you understand the solution, we can prompt it, we can do but is the prompting right? Are we understanding that there are hallucinations, and do we understand when we see hallucinations what we should do, right? That is where AI fluency comes along, where you're not just teaching like we do with traditional training. So with traditional IT training, you would say, we've deployed this solution, teach them how to use it. Right? If I understand how to use Gemini, I can type a prompt in and it will give me an answer. But am I typing the right prompt? Do I get the right answers if I'm in consultancy? Am I giving my customers the right answer because the prompt engineering, is it right? Is there bias in the answers that I'm giving? Now, so AI fluency is moving from just understanding that this is the training on how to use this solution, understanding that there are many aspects in the answers and the work that we produce that we need to be careful about. So our training now needs to move from just knowledge of AI to fluency of AI. These are the things you need to understand. Drift, you need to understand, and we've talked a bit about drift before. So it's the use of the AI solution over time, but when you incorporate new variables into the AI solution, is the AI solution adapting such that it is still giving you accurate answers? It's still, so everybody needs to understand that there will be drift and there can be drift. Are we monitoring for drift, right? So it's moving from just AI knowledge to AI fluency, and organizations should then adapt their training to that.
All right. So I saw Patrick's hand. If you want to, I can allow you to talk. Patrick, if you want to talk, you can ask your question or make your contribution. But while we are expecting you to do that, we're about rounding up now. We will round up in the next 5 minutes. Dr. Obrim, I want you to think about it. This question: what do you think board need to do differently right now? Different board. What do we just think about it before Patrick? Patrick, if you are there, you can please make your contribution, please.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is
Good
Patrick,
afternoon.
and I'm actually in practicing AI in business, so I'm also certified. My contribution is particularly to the last question that was answered. I wanted to speak to the aspect of critical thinking. Critical thinking is essential when you try to use human in the loop and assessing AI outputs. AI risk is usually centered around its output. The output is benchmarked on the drift and is benchmarked on the quality of the output. When measuring AI outputs, you look at things like precision and accuracy. But previously, data science guides insights into understanding the root cause. But AI goes beyond the root cause. AI gives you recommendations. Now, human in the loops comes between that gap between recommendation and validating the outputs. The human in the loop stands to validate all of AI outputs, helping to filter out all the irrelevant, less and not up-to-date information. That way, all AI outputs can be tied to a responsible validator. That validator will now be in charge of the output, claiming it as his or her own output, which will now be defined as AI in collaboration with whoever does the validation. That way, you can now give some sense of judgment and give some sense of direction and some sense of responsibility when considering AI output. That's just my part of the question. My part of the
Thank you. Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Patrick. So, Dr. Obrima, I'm going to come to you, but Alexander, I want you to please take this question after Dr. Obrima. That governmental regulatory framework, do we currently have a governmental regulatory framework that addresses our peculiar socio-cultural nuances? Are the AI model that we have in Nigeria tailored to address our local need? And that takes me to what Goji said the other time, that if you cannot speak your language, then it's not meant to solve your solution, to solve your problem. So, but let's go to Dr. Obrima now.
I think that's what the boards need to do differently. The first thing is that you cannot preside over what you don't understand. So there has to be knowledge and understanding, because you might have knowledge and you might not have understanding. For example, if people take emails and put it on ChatGPT to get a feedback, guess what? It's already in public domain. So as an organization, how do you deal with that? You need to have your own internal security for that to happen. Why you still provide the same solution, but there should be some security to make sure that you don't have it in public domain. It is now, an internal document. So you use it internally, but still getting the same result as you will have if it's public domain. So there has to be knowledge, not just to the board, but also across board. Everybody was knowledgeable. That's why it has to be a framework. It's not a tool. And that's what happened with Air Canada. It was a tool. And that's why they ran into that problem. It should not be a tool. It should be a complete framework that you're going to work with. And everybody must have understanding. And that's why accountability rests with the board, because when there's a mess up, there's a reputational risk you have to deal with, a reputational risk you have to deal with, and that's the board. If you lose money, it still rests with the board. So a complete framework, but there has to be knowledge. Board members cannot preside over what they don't understand. And I think that's
absolutely
that's what needs to be done urgently.
Thank you. I mean, this AI governance training, that's what I think you are saying, because you can't sitting over what, you can sit over what you don't understand. We know what the result is going to be, as we see in different in different sections of our society. Anyway, let me quickly come to Alex. Alex, over to you.
Thank you very
And I
much.
would want Ugochi, please bear this in mind that given the need for agility and innovation in today's VUCA world, how can board strike the right balance between enabling innovation and ensuring appropriate accountability, security, and ethical oversight? Because sometimes you see that there is a friction between innovation, and accountability and all of that. So please bear that in mind. And I saw Omolulu. Omolulu will be the last person that is going to make a comment on this. Then after that, we're going to call it a day. I know we can go on and on, on day. It's such an interesting topic, but we don't have the time, with us. So Alex, please.
Thank you very much, Dr. Yanda. So I think I would like to answer the question, starting with the last one, whether the AI models we have in Nigeria, we use in Nigeria, are tailored to address our local needs. I would say that is a bit better now, because I remember when we all started adopting generative AI, ChatGPT, and the likes. If you tell it to generate the picture of an Asian woman or an African person, right, it tends to paint this picture as if the woman is somewhere in the bush suffering, right? Whereas that is not the true picture of an African person. I mean, you have African people who live in developed towns and cities and they are doing well for themselves, as we see here in Lagos. So why did this model not paint that picture? Instead, it gave us someone who is in the remote area, right? But it's getting better, and we have brilliant minds in Nigeria that can actually, put their brains out there and develop something that really works for us. So I think apart from it being a question, it should be also a challenge for those in, the core tech field to take this up and say, hey, we need to start building things that will address our local needs here in Nigeria. Then for having a governmental regulatory framework that address, of course, our social cultural nuances. While there isn't any framework or act or law that addresses AI specifically on its own. Remember, we have the Nigerian Data Protection Act, right? There is a section there that addresses automated decision making. And if you read the GATE 2025, which is an implementation directive on how you make use of that act, there are sections dedicated to emerging technologies and what you should comply with when deploying or making use of AI. And currently there are talks just fairly about a week ago. Mr. Tijani somewhere in London, in Warwick, at a conference, announced that the Federal Executive Council has approved for Nigeria to have a national AI trust, right? And what is the function of this AI trust? In order to champion the national AI strategy, which had already been developed by the Center for AI and Robotics. And eventually, where this is headed is that it will now pave way to, inform the various deliberations that will help to develop some kind of framework or law to guide AI development in Nigeria and, uses by organizations. What we hope to see is that it will have almost the same effect as the EU AI Act and other, laws in other countries. So for now, while we do not have a singular one, but these are embedded in the various laws that we currently have. And it is important for organizations to interpret these laws and implement them accordingly.
Thank you so much for that. So let me go back to Ugochi, please.
Yes, so I think just looking at the question, there's a a delicate balance that you need to achieve as a board. It's important that, and I think I talked a little bit about that before. The balance between making sure that you are putting in place governance that is developmental is really key, as opposed to risk-based. And if we look at things like the EU AI Act, right, it's been criticized a lot about, for the fact that it's very risk-focused. It's very risk-based. What that does is it slows down innovation. So boards should be thinking today, about what is the minimum risk that we will take. So a minimum level. So you put together like an AI committee within your organization, governing committee within your organization, or an AI governing department, right? And that department should be looking at what is the minimum that we would be, the minimum risk that we should be looking at if we want to deploy any AI solution. So not as high as the risks that are categorized on like the EU AI Act, right, which is very stringent and doesn't allow you to think about innovation and development. It might stifle that. But then because you want to be an innovative company, you say at the very minimum, these are the 4 or 5 things that an AI solution should do, should be monitored for, should be, and then if the solution crosses that threshold, you then can deploy it with enough monitoring to show that it fits into your context. And then you can go from there, because then you allow innovation to thrive within the organization. But at the same time, you have a committee or a group of people that are looking at the risks that could come out of this. Right. I think that's a pragmatic way to ensure that you continue to innovate, but at the same time are looking at oversight.
Thank you so much. So, Amadulu, I have your hand. So, can you please go ahead?
Good morning, everyone. I'm calling in from DC, Washington, and
Oh,
Dr.
wow.
Used to be my lecturer back at Babcock University. Graduate of 2024. So I'm currently in University of Baltimore, and I'm doing my PhD in public administration. My research focuses on how do we redesign the performance appraisal to incorporate relational competency in the era of AI, because as it is, AI is augmenting technical work across every function. But what are we actually appraising or measuring when we measure performance? And I think that question will be very good for Babatunde, Dr. Babatunde Obrima.
Brima. All right. So, what are we appraising?
So,
Good to see you. Good to see you again, please.
maybe I need to understand performance in organizations, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, look, everybody's in business for profit. I used to have a CEO when I was in the bank. He says there are 3 things that are important in this bank. The first one is profit. The second one is profit. The third one is profit. So I think that, profit is one thing that you want to measure. How is AI impacting on your performance, on productivity? Also, you want to measure how that is affecting your service delivery. You talked about hallucinations. What you're providing, how is it impacting on? There must be a way to measure what you're deploying. How is it impacting on your people? Because without the people, everything is. I read a true story about an organization where the board fired the MD because they felt it was too nice to the people. It was profit sharing was too high and things like that. And 80% of the staff resigned when the board MD left, and the company went bankrupt. And this same MD went back and bought the company and brought everybody back. And it's not $1 billion organization. So it's people are important. How is AI impacting on the people? There's actually a case in China where the court ruled against that organization that fired someone because they had introduced AI. And the court says, no, your AI is supposed to enhance your business, not to fire people. And the guy was restored. So, what are you measuring? So profit, customer appreciation or customer reaction. You're measuring people, your own internal people, and I think those are 3 things that you should measure: productivity, people, and your customer reaction to what you're deploying.
Thank you so much. So the last question I have here, we'll just quickly look at it. In a country like Nigeria, where employment and social stability remain critical development priorities, how should leaders determine the right balance between AI-driven efficiency and the potential displacement of jobs? I was expecting that question to come, and maybe the panelists may add to it. When new technology, emerge, there is always a fear that there will be job displacement, and all of that. Remember back in the days when people were talking about even automation, digitalizations, and what have you. You remember the Y2K, of this world. And even when internet and all of that, emerged, people thought that, oh, now everything robot is going to take over and all of that. But what we have seen over the years is that it has also created more jobs, more industries. If you go on our social media, there are guys who are millionaires now who are doing extremely well that they wouldn't have in those periods that some of us were growing up. Because the period that some of us were growing up, what are they measuring? They are measuring, your certificate, your mental ability, and all of that. But somebody just, you can make any joke on the internet and you go viral and you become a celebrity overnight, and all of that. That's what you have now. However, having said that, it's also the fact that before we begin to talk of serious automation, I think we should also address the issue of augmentations. How do we augment what we have? How do we guide against careless automation? How do we ensure that what we have is sensible automation, that we are not automating for the sake of automating? I will tell you, one of our clients, a very, very big commercial bank in Nigeria, the MD, as usual, they travel out, they bought, saw some of this technology, and they say, okay, they want to create a digital center. So they brought some robot, they put it at digital center. So if you go there, the robot will say, okay, Kunle, how are you? Welcome, and all of that. And I went to do a study of it, and I discovered that when people see, they just bypass the robot. And not only that, even some of the things that they automated after few months, guess what? The tellers and the customers inexperienced person, they just pack everything aside and they resorted back to the status quo. So what we are saying is that it should be driven by value creation. What value are we adding? How are we augmenting, what we are doing currently, rather than just jumping into the euphoria of, oh, well, you know what? Everybody is talking of AI, we have to do AI. Everybody is talking of machine learning, we have to do and all of that. So I think what we need is responsible adoption, not just careless, deployment. I don't know if any of the panelists have anything to say. Otherwise, I would like to close the webinar.
So just to
Maybe
add a bit
one
to
word to just one sentence, one word.
yes,
Yes.
I totally agree with you, Dr. Yanda. I think as a society, we need to now go back to our value system. For me, right, nothing beats human connection, right? I walk into an organization. Yes, you have beautiful tools and all that, right? But it is someone in that organization that will guide me, your customer, on how to make use of that tool. And if I'm not comfortable with what that tool has given, I still need to come back. There should be a human being there for me to come back to. So nothing beats human connection. And there's just so much that an AI or robotics can do. I mean, things on emotion, managing emotions, emotional intelligence, and all that. We are yet to see that as an effective output from AI tools. We still need that human connection. And for most businesses that thrive on trust to make profits, right? That trust is something that I, as a person, can easily get from a human being. So that human connection and responsible, augmentation when implementing AI is really important.
Thank you so much for that. Do I have any other comment from
Let me
Buchi?
just add. I think from just thinking about everything we've said today, I think hints are in everything that we've said today. The world will continue to evolve. Things will continue to happen. When the computer came, we thought everything was done and this was the end of the world, but it didn't end. So the world will continue to evolve. Inside of that evolution, you need to start finding what the opportunities are. As we've spoken today, we can see where the opportunities are. You need ethics. You don't have any ethics like AI ethics or regulation people anywhere in the world. We're just developing them. Myself, other people, we're just developing them. We've talked a lot about prompt engineering. It's garbage in, garbage out. You might have an AI solution that now templates all of the things that you have in your organization, all the documents you need to produce, but you need to be able to prompt the AI solution. You need to be able to template it. There's somebody that has to do that to make sure that it's not just rubbish that you're reading out at board meetings. It's not just rubbish you're sending out to your customer. So we move from, because we already know what AI is going to automate today, right? The everyday tasks that don't need any kind of intellectual kind of stimulation to put out. AI will automate that automatically, and there's nothing we can do about that. Now we need to start thinking about the things that need intellectual stimulation, things like prompt engineering. We need to start developing prompt engineers. We need to start finding people in AI ethics, AI regulation. We need to start finding people who put together these strategies and framework for your AI deployments in organizations. And that's where you start to find people moving towards, right?
Thank you so much. One last word from you, Dr. Bremer, please.
Yes, so I mean, the World Economic Forum says that with emerging technology, 82 million roles are going to be lost, but 133 new roles are going to be created. So it's what additional knowledge or skill do I need to have with what I have right now? And I think that's what's important to everyone. If things will keep changing, but as it changes, we have a pragmatic mindset to be able to align and also change, and adapt, and equip myself for it. And I think those are the people that will survive. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. So God has created us to be very adaptive. So you need to be very flexible. Things will continue to evolve. And as things evolve, ask yourself, am I prepared? Disruption is going to be constant, whether we like it or not. So in this age of constant disruptions, how prepared, are you? What do you need to change? What do you need to address in your organization, but most especially in your personal life? So I want to thank you, our audience, for today. We've spent 1 hour, 26 minutes, and still people waited. We just want to thank you. Please try to follow us on social media. That is there on the screen. We'll make available these recordings, on YouTube and on other media. We'll get it across to all of us. Let's try to watch it and maybe share it again. A lot of insights today, and our panelists have done justice to it. Thank you, Iguchi, for that brilliant submission. Thank you, Alex, for that wonderful insight that you have given unto us. Dr. Bremer, thank you for bringing the boardroom insight, into our discussion. And for our audience watching us online, we want to thank you. Take your flowers. And for those of you who have waited, all through, we also want to thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.